The great hall of Axis Prime was filled with light. Thousands of floating crystals hung from the ceiling, each one glowing with a soft blue color. The hall was built to make visitors feel small. It worked. Ambassador Doyon Lee walked toward the center of the room. His footsteps echoed against the stone floor. Around him sat the representatives of 12 alien species. They watched him with eyes of different shapes and colors. Some had 4 eyes. Some had none. But all of them looked at him the same way, like he was something less than them. Doyon had served Earth for 20 years. He had smiled when he wanted to scream. He had bowed when he wanted to stand tall. He had done everything his government asked because he believed in peace. He believed that one day humanity would earn its place among the stars. Today, that belief would be tested. He reached the speaking platform and stood before the curved table where the council leaders sat. High Speaker Vorath was in the center. He was tall and thin, with gray skin that looked like old leather. His species, the Morith, had ruled the council for 300 years. He looked at Doyon the way a man looks at an insect. "You may speak," Vorath said. His voice was deep and cold. Doyon activated the holographic display on his wrist. Images appeared in the air above him. Burning cities. Dead bodies. Ships falling from the sky. 3 months ago, a fleet attacked our colony on New Busan, Doyon said. His voice was calm, but his hands were shaking slightly. 8,000 people died. Men, women, children. The attackers wore no markings. But we found evidence. DNA, ship parts. Communication signals. The attackers were Talvari. He turned to look at Chancellor Macruz, leader of the Talvari Empire. Mecris was short and wide, with dark red skin and small black eyes. He sat in his chair like a king on a throne. He did not look worried at all. "We have a treaty," Doyon continued. "The Mutual Defense Accord. It says that council members must protect each other from attack. Earth has followed every rule. We have paid every taxes. We have limited our fleet to 100 ships, just as you demanded. We trusted you to keep us safe." He paused and looked around the room. "We were wrong." Silence filled the hall. Then Chancellor Mecris began to laugh. It was not a small laugh. It was loud and ugly. It filled the entire room. "This is your evidence," Macruz said. "Some burned buildings and broken ships. My people did not attack your little colony. Perhaps your own people did it. Perhaps they are too stupid to fly their own ships." Some of the other representatives laughed too. Arbiter Nellos of the Keth Dominion smiled with his many teeth. "Humans always cry for help," he said, "like babies calling for their mothers." Doyon felt heat rise in his chest. He had spent his whole career being polite, being patient, being small. He looked at the faces around him and saw nothing but contempt. "I'm not asking for your pity," Doyon said. "I am asking for justice." The treaty says what we decide it says," Vorath interrupted. His voice cut through the air like a blade. "You are the youngest species in this council. You have been members for only 30 years. Do you think that gives you the right to make demands?" 8,000 people are dead," Doyon said. "Millions of Talvari died in wars before your species learned to make fire," Mecris replied. "Do not lecture us about death, human. You know nothing of sacrifice." Vorath raised his hand for silence. The room went quiet. He leaned forward and stared at Doyon with his pale yellow eyes. "Ambassador Lee," he said slowly, "I will explain something to you. Something your government does not seem to understand. Humanity exists in this galaxy because we allow it. Your ships fly because we permit them to fly. Your colonies survive because we choose not to destroy them." He stood up from his chair. He was very tall, almost 3 meters. He looked down at Doyon like a giant looking at a child. "You came here asking for military authorization? You want permission to build more ships? To make weapons? To defend yourselves?" He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "The answer is no. The council has voted 12 species against 1. You will return to Earth and tell your leaders to be grateful for what they have." Doyon stood very still. His heart was beating fast, but his face showed nothing. "And if the attacks continue?" he asked quietly. Vorath smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Then you will die quietly, as all weak species do. That is the way of the galaxy, Ambassador. The strong survive. The weak disappear. Know your place." Mekris stood up and pointed at Dojan. "Go home, human. Go back to your little planet and your little dreams. Tell your people that they are nothing. They have always been nothing, and they will always be nothing." The hall erupted in laughter. 12 species, laughing at one man. Laughing at his planet. Laughing at everything humanity had tried to build. Dojan looked at them all. He memorized every face, every smile, every mocking eye. Then he did something that surprised them. He bowed, low and respectful, just as he had done 1,000 times before. "Thank you for your time," he said softly. He turned and walked toward the exit. His footsteps were the only sound in the sudden silence. The representatives watched him go, confused by his calm reaction. When the doors closed behind him, Dojan stopped walking. He stood alone in the empty corridor. For a long moment, he did not move. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small communication device. He typed 5 words and sent them. "To Earth, the stars have turned cold." Then he walked to his ship and left Axis Prime forever. Behind him, the council returned to their business, already forgetting the human who had stood before them. They did not know that they had just made the worst mistake in galactic history. President Unikim read the message 3 times. 5 words that changed everything. She sat alone in her office, high above the city of Sol. Through the window, she could see millions of lights, millions of lives, all of them trusting her to keep them safe. She pressed a button on her desk. "Call the cabinet. Emergency session. Now." 2 hours later, she stood before the leaders of Earth. Military, commanders, scientists, politicians. They filled the underground chamber beneath the presidential palace. They all looked worried. They all looked afraid. "The council has rejected our request," Una said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were hard. They laughed at Ambassador Lee. They told him that humanity exists only because they allow it. They said we are nothing. Silence filled the room. General Taiho Park, the supreme commander of Earth's military, stepped forward. He was 60 years old, with gray hair and a face like carved stone. He had fought in 3 wars before humanity reached the stars. He knew what was coming. "What are your orders, Madam President?" he asked. Una looked at the people around her. She had spent 10 years building peace, 10 years signing treaties, 10 years teaching humanity to be patient. All of it was about to end. "Executive Order 7741, she said quietly. "We withdraw from everything. Every treaty, every accord, every agreement. Starting now." The room erupted in noise. People shouted questions. Some shouted protests. Una raised her hand, and they fell silent. "I know what you're thinking," she said. "You're thinking about the trade routes, the protection agreements, the technology exchanges. You're thinking about what we'll lose?" She paused. "But I'm thinking about what we already lost. 8,000 people on New Busan, and the council told us their lives don't matter." She walked to the center of the room. "For 30 years, we played by their rules. We kept our fleet small. We stopped building weapons. We trusted them to protect us. And what did we get? Dead colonists and mockery." Dr. Hannah Chen stood up from her seat. She was small and quiet, with glasses that made her look younger than her 50 years. She had led Earth's secret research program since the beginning. She knew things that most people in this room did not know. "Madame President," Hannah said, "if you give the order, we're ready." Una nodded. "Show them." Hannah pressed a button on her tablet. The main screen lit up with images that made everyone in the room stop breathing. Ships. Thousands of ships. Warships bigger than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Weapons that could crack planets. Technology that made the Council's best equipment look like children's toys. "Operation Forge," Hannah said. "We started it 30 years ago. The same day we signed the first treaty. The council told us to limit our fleet to 100 ships. So we built 100 ships that they could see, and 2,000 ships that they could not. General Tai-ho walked closer to the screen. His eyes were wide. In all his years of service, he had never seen anything like this. Where? He asked, where did you hide all of this? Everywhere, Hannah replied. Underground on Mars, inside the moons of Jupiter, deep beneath Titan's ice. We built shipyards in places no one would ever look. We recruited scientists who the council thought were dead. We developed weapons in laboratories that officially do not exist. Yuna stepped forward. The council thinks we spent 30 years being weak. They think we wasted our time begging for scraps. They're wrong. We spent 30 years preparing for the day they showed us who they really are. She turned to face the room. That day has come. Within 6 hours, Earth went dark. Communication channels closed. Trade routes emptied. Human diplomats disappeared from every station in the galaxy. The council noticed, but they did not worry. High Speaker Voroth told his advisors that humanity was throwing a tantrum. Chancellor Macrus made jokes at dinner parties. The humans have locked themselves in their room, he said. Let them cry. They will come crawling back when they get hungry. But the days passed, and humanity did not come back. Weeks passed. Still nothing. The silence grew deeper and deeper. Some council members began to feel uneasy. Something was wrong. But they pushed the feeling away. Humanity was weak. Everyone knew that. On Titan, in a shipyard buried beneath 3 kilometers of ice, Admiral Tai-ho Park walked through the massive docking bay. The ceiling stretched so high he could barely see it. The floor stretched so far he could not see the end. And everywhere he looked, there were ships. Beautiful ships. Deadly ships. Ships that moved faster than light. Ships with weapons that could burn through any shield. Ships that carried fighters and bombers and soldiers, an entire navy, hidden from the galaxy for 30 years. Captain Minho Choi walked beside him. He was young and eager, one of the best tactical officers Earth had ever produced. He had trained his whole life for a war that everyone said would never come. Sir Minho said, "Are we really doing this?" Tai-ho stopped walking. He looked at the ships around him. Each one represented years of work, years of sacrifice, years of secrets. They laughed at us, Tai-ho said quietly. They told us we were nothing. They killed our people and called it acceptable losses. He turned to face Minho. What do you think? Minho's jaw tightened. I think it's time to show them who we are. Tai-ho nodded. He placed his hand on the young captain's shoulder. Then let's begin. Above them, President Unikim addressed the people of Earth. Her face appeared on every screen in every home on every colony. We came to the stars with hope, she said. We wanted to make friends. We wanted to learn. We wanted to grow together with the galaxy. But the galaxy did not want us. They wanted servants. They wanted victims. They wanted us to bow and be grateful for the privilege of existing. Her eyes hardened. No more. Tonight, humanity remembers who we are. We are not servants. We are not victims. We are the children of Earth. And tomorrow, the galaxy will learn what that means. The transmission ended. Across human space, people looked at each other with new eyes. The fear was gone. Something else had taken its place. Something dangerous. Something beautiful. Hope. 3 weeks after Earth went silent, the Talvari came again. Commander Vex stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at the blue and green planet below. New Busan, he had attacked this world once before. It had been easy. The humans had cried and screamed and died. His soldiers had laughed while they burned the cities. Now he was back to finish what he started. How many ships did they have? Vex asked his officer. Scanners show 12 patrol vessels. Commander. Old models. Weak weapons. No threat. Vex smiled with his many teeth. The council had told humanity to stay small. Humanity had obeyed like good little pets. Now, they would pay for their obedience with their lives. All ships, begin the attack, Vex ordered. Kill everyone. Leave nothing standing. 40 Talvari warships moved toward the planet, their weapons charged with deadly energy, their crews prepared for slaughter. This would be easy. This would be fun. Then something strange happened. A light appeared behind the planet's largest moon. Then another light. Then 100 lights. Then 300. The lights grew brighter and brighter until the darkness of space itself seemed to burn. Vex's smile disappeared. What is that? His officer's hands were shaking. Commander, I'm reading 300 human warships. No. 320. They came from nowhere. They were not there before. From behind the moon came the largest ship Vex had ever seen. It was black and silver, shaped like a blade, made for cutting through stars. Its hull was covered with weapons that glowed with blue fire. On its side, in letters that burned with light, was a single word. Sovereign Captain Minho Choi stood on the bridge of the Sovereign. Around him, officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. No one was afraid. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. Open a channel to the Talvari fleet, Minho said. The communication officer nodded. Channel open, Captain. Minho looked at the screen showing Commander Vex's face. The Talvari commander looked confused. He looked scared. Good, Commander Vex, Minho said calmly. 3 months ago, you attacked this world. You killed 8,000 innocent people. Today, you will answer for that crime. Vex tried to look brave. You dare threaten me? I have 40 warships. You cannot— I'm not threatening you, Minho interrupted. I'm telling you what is going to happen. You have 30 seconds to surrender. After that, we will destroy your entire fleet. This is your only warning, Vex laughed, but the sound was hollow. You're bluffing. Humans don't have ships like this. The treaties are dead, Minho said. And in 20 seconds, so are you. Vex looked at his officers. They looked back at him with terror in their eyes. The human fleet was moving into attack position. 300 ships against 40. Weapons that burned brighter than anything the Talvari had ever seen. Commander, his officer whispered, we should retreat. Vex's pride was stronger than his fear. Never. All ships opened fire. Minho watched the Talvari weapons light up the darkness. Missiles and energy beams flew toward the human fleet. For a moment, space was filled with deadly fire. Then the human shields activated. Every attack hit the shields and disappeared. Not deflected. Not absorbed. Disappeared, like throwing stones at the ocean. The Talvari weapons did nothing at all. Minho nodded to his weapons officer. Return fire. What happened next was not a battle. It was an execution. The Sovereign's main weapon fired a beam of pure white light. It cut through Vex's flagship like a knife through paper. The ship exploded in a ball of fire that lasted less than a second. Then the other human ships opened fire. Blue beams and golden missiles filled the space between the fleets. Talvari ships died one after another. Some tried to run. Human ships were faster. Some tried to surrender. Minho had given them their chance. They had refused. No second chances. 11 minutes after the battle began, it was over. 40 Talvari warships were gone, reduced to dust and memory. Not a single human ship had been scratched. Minho stood in silence for a long moment. He thought about New Busan. He thought about the 8,000 people who had died screaming while the galaxy laughed. He thought about the children who would never grow up. Send a message to the Talvari homeworld, he said finally. Tell them this. This is humanity's first reply. The message was sent. The galaxy heard it. And the galaxy was afraid. Across human space, similar scenes played out. Colony worlds that had seemed defenseless suddenly revealed massive orbital platforms. Hidden fleets emerged from asteroid belts and gas giants. Trade stations that humanity had abandoned were now armed fortresses. The weak, quiet humans were gone. In their place stood something new. Something powerful. Something that the galaxy had never seen before. On Axis Prime, High Speaker Vorath called an emergency meeting of the council. Representatives rushed to the Great Hall, their faces pale with shock. The crystals on the ceiling seemed dimmer than before. The room that had felt so powerful now felt small and cold. How is this possible? Arbiter Nellos demanded. They were supposed to have 100 ships. 100. Where did they get thousands? Chancellor Mechorus was silent. His red skin had turned pale. He had sent his fleet to die. He had thought it would be easy. He had been wrong. Vorath stood at the head of the table. For the first time in 300 years, his hands were shaking. We need to respond, he said. We need to show them that the council is still in control. A representative shouted. They destroyed 40 ships in 11 minutes. They didn't lose a single vessel. How do we fight something like that? Vorath had no answer. He looked around the room at the faces of the most powerful beings in the galaxy. They all looked the same way now. They looked like prey. On Earth, President Una Kim received the battle report. She read it twice, then set it down on her desk. Admiral Taiho Park stood before her, waiting. 11 minutes, she said softly. 30 years of preparation. 30 years of patience. And it took 11 minutes. Taiho nodded. They never expected us to fight back. They thought we were broken. Una stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting over Seoul. The sky was painted with red and gold. It was beautiful. It was peaceful. It would not last. This is only the beginning, she said. They will come for us now. All of them. Let them come, Taiho replied. We're ready. Una turned to face him. Her eyes were sad but determined. I wanted peace, Taiho. I really did. I spent my whole life trying to avoid this moment. I know, Taiho said gently. But sometimes, peace is not a choice. Sometimes you have to fight for the right to live in peace. Una nodded slowly. She looked out at the sunset one more time. Then she straightened her shoulders and turned back to her desk. Tell the fleet to prepare, she said. The council will attack soon. When they do, we will be waiting. The war had begun, and humanity was ready. The Galactic Council issued its declaration on the morning of the 14th day. Every station, every planet, every ship in the known galaxy received the same message. High Speaker Vorath stood in the Great Hall of Axis Prime, his voice echoing through space. The human species has violated every treaty it signed, Vorath announced. They have built illegal weapons. They have constructed forbidden ships. They have murdered Talvar soldiers in an unprovoked attack. The Council hereby demands that Earth immediately disarm its illegal fleet and submit to full Council oversight. Failure to comply will result in military action. The message ended. The galaxy waited for Earth's response. It came 3 hours later, but it did not come from diplomats or politicians. It came from Admiral Taiho Park, standing on the bridge of the Sovereign. His face appeared on every screen that had shown Vorath's message. His voice was calm and clear. For 30 years you told us to be patient, Taiho said. You told us the treaties would protect us. You promised that if we stayed small, if we stayed quiet, if we obeyed your rules, we would be safe. He paused. His eyes were hard as stone. You lied. Transmission showed images behind him. Burned colonies. Dead children. Mass graves. The evidence of 30 years of attacks that the Council had ignored. You watched our people die, Taiho continued. You called it acceptable losses. You laughed when we begged for help. You told us that we existed only because you allowed it. He leaned forward slightly. We are done asking for permission to exist. We are done begging for scraps from your table. We are done being your victims. His voice dropped lower, harder. You want our ships? Come and take them. You want our weapons? Come and face them. You think we are weak? You think we are afraid? He smiled. It was not a kind smile. We are humanity, and we are done being quiet. The transmission ended. The galaxy fell silent. Then the Council acted. Arbiter Nellos of the Keth Dominion volunteered to teach humanity its place. The Keth were warriors. They had conquered 100 worlds. They had never lost a war in 500 years. They were not afraid of some upstart species with new toys. Nellos gathered the largest fleet the galaxy had seen in generations. 500 warships. The pride of the Keth Dominion. The terror of 1,000 planets. They would surround Earth's solar system and choke humanity until it surrendered or died. The fleet traveled for 6 days. When they finally arrived at the edge of human space, Nellos stood on his command ship and smiled. Victory was certain. Humanity would kneel or burn. Then his sensors lit up with warnings. "What is that?" Nellos demanded. His officers stared at their screens in disbelief. The entire solar system was surrounded by a wall of light. Thousands of platforms floated in a perfect sphere around the sun. Each platform was covered with weapons. Each weapon was pointed outward, waiting. "It's a defensive network," an officer whispered. "But this is impossible. Nothing this large has ever been built. It would take centuries to construct something like this." Nellos felt the first hint of fear in his chest. He pushed it down. He was Keth. He did not know fear. "It doesn't matter how many platforms they have," he growled. "We have 500 warships. Attack." The Keth fleet moved forward. Their weapons fired at the distant platforms. Energy beams and missiles flew across the darkness of space. Then project. Aegis activated. Dr. Hannah Chen had spent 20 years building this system. It was her masterpiece. Her legacy. Every platform was connected to every other platform through quantum links that worked faster than light. They did not think. They did not hesitate. They simply acted as one perfect machine. The human platforms moved. Not slowly, like the massive structures they appeared to be. They moved like dancers. Like predators. They dodged the Keth weapons and fired back with terrible precision. Gravitational disruptors tore through. Keth shields like they were made of paper. Energy weapons burned through hulls. Missiles that could not be stopped found their targets again and again. Nellos watched his fleet die. One ship every few seconds. Then one ship every second. Then 5 ships every second. His beautiful armada was being torn apart by machines. Not a single human soldier fired a shot. The platforms did everything. "Retreat!" Nellos screamed. "All ships, retreat." But it was too late. The platforms had surrounded them. There was nowhere to run. The Keth ships tried to escape, but the net was closing. Tighter and tighter. Smaller and smaller. In 4 hours, it was over. 500 Keth warships reduced to floating wreckage. The greatest fleet in galactic history destroyed by automated defenses. Nellos' command ship was the last to fall. Before it exploded, he managed to send one final message. "We surrender," he said. His voice was broken. His pride was shattered. "We surrender. Please, stop." The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Every species heard the arbiter of the Keth Dominion begging for mercy from humans. The most feared warriors in known space brought to their knees by a species they had mocked as weak and worthless. President Una Kim responded to the surrender. Her voice was calm and measured. "Arbiter Nellos," she said, "you came to our home with 500 warships. You came to kill our people and burn our worlds. You thought we would surrender? You thought we would beg?" She paused. "You were wrong." Nellos' face appeared on the screen. He looked old now. Old and broken. "How?" He whispered. "How did you do this?" "We didn't know. We didn't understand what you were." Yuna's expression did not change. "No," she said quietly. "You simply never bothered to ask." The transmission ended. Nellos' ship exploded moments later, one final casualty of a battle that had changed the galaxy forever. On Earth. Admiral Taiho stood beside Dr. Hannah in the control room of Titan Base. They watched the last Keth ships disappear from their screens. Around them, officers were cheering. Some were crying. They had one. 20 years, Hannah said softly. "I built that system for 20 years. I always hoped we would never have to use it." Taiho nodded. "No. But they didn't give us a choice." Hannah looked at him with tired eyes. "What happens now?" Taiho turned to face the main screen. It showed the stars. Thousands of them. Millions of them. Each one a battlefield waiting to happen. Now, he said, we finish what they started. The council had sent their best, their strongest, their most feared warriors. And humanity had destroyed them without losing a single ship. The message was clear. Earth was no longer prey. Earth was something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before. And they were just getting started. 1 year later, the galaxy was a different place. The Galactic Council no longer existed. Its great hall on Axis Prime stood empty and dark. The floating crystals had stopped glowing. The curved table where 12 species had once ruled the stars was covered in dust. No one came here anymore. No one wanted to remember what this place had been. In its place stood something new. The Assembly of Worlds met on Earth now, in a building that rose high above the city of New Sol. It was made of glass and steel, simple and strong. 30 species sent representatives. They sat in a great circle, facing each other as equals. No one sat higher than anyone else. No one looked down on their neighbors. Ambassador Do-Yan Lee, a high speaker of the assembly, stood at the center of the circle. He was older now. His hair had turned gray at the temples. But his eyes were bright and clear. The assembly recognizes the representative from the Talvari people, Do-Yan announced. A young Talvari female stood up. Her name was Sira. She had been appointed after the war. After everything changed, she looked nothing like Chancellor Mekris. Her eyes were kind. Her voice was soft. High Speaker, she said. On behalf of my people, I wish to formally apologize for the crimes committed against humanity. We were wrong. Our leaders were wrong. We do not ask for forgiveness. We only ask for the chance to prove that we have changed. Do-Yan nodded slowly. The Assembly accepts your words, Representative Sira. The path forward is long, but it begins with honesty. We are glad you have taken the first step. Sira bowed her head and sat down. Around her, representatives from other species watched with different expressions. Some looked ashamed. Some looked relieved. Some still looked afraid. They were all learning to live in a new galaxy, a galaxy where humanity was no longer weak. Chancellor Mekris was not in the assembly. He would never be in any assembly again. After the war ended, he had been tried for crimes against humanity. The evidence was overwhelming. The dead colonists, the burned cities, the children who would never grow up. He had laughed while ordering the attacks. He had called humanity worthless insects. Now he was paying for every word. He lived on a small moon at the edge of known space, a dead rock where nothing grew. His palace had been replaced by a simple shelter. His servants had been replaced by silence. Every day he looked out at the ruins of a human colony that his ships had destroyed. Every day he remembered what he had done. Every day he understood the price of cruelty. He would live there for the rest of his long life. Alone with his memories, alone with his guilt. It was not death. It was something worse. It was truth. High Speaker Vorith had requested a private meeting with President Yunakim. She agreed. They met in a small room with no windows. Just 2 chairs and a table between them. Vorith looked different now. Smaller, somehow. The arrogance was gone from his eyes. In its place was something that might have been shame. Madam President, he said, I came to ask you a question. I need to understand. Yuna waited in silence. How? Vorith asked. How did you build all of this without us knowing? We had spies. We had sensors. We watched your every move for 30 years, and we saw nothing. Yuna looked at him for a long moment. Then she spoke. You gave us 30 years, she said simply. 30 years to grow. 30 years to learn. 30 years to prepare. You thought you were controlling us. You thought you were keeping us weak. But you taught us something valuable. What? Vorith asked. You taught us that words mean nothing without strength. You taught us that treaties are just paper. You taught us that the only safety is the safety you build yourself. She paused. And you assumed that because we were quiet, we were weak. That was your mistake. Barath closed his eyes. We were fools. Yasuna agreed. You were. But you don't have to stay fools. The assembly is open to all species, even yours. The galaxy can be different now. Better. But only if we all choose to make it better. Vorath opened his eyes. They were wet. Why? He whispered. Why would you offer us anything? After everything we did? Una stood up and walked to the door. She stopped with her hand on the handle. 'Cause we are human, she said. And humans believe in second chances. We believe that people can change. We believe that tomorrow can be better than yesterday. She looked back at him. We could have destroyed you all. We had the power. But power without mercy is just cruelty. And we are not cruel. She opened the door. Go home, Vorath. Tell your people that the war is over. Tell them that Earth offers peace. Real peace. Built on respect instead of fear. Then she was gone. Vorath sat alone in the empty room for a long time, thinking about everything he had lost, thinking about everything he had learned. Admiral Taiho Park retired from active service on a quiet morning in spring. He stood on the observation deck of Titan Base, looking out at the stars. Captain Minho stood beside him. Sir Minho said, Do you ever regret it? The war? Taiho was silent for a moment. He thought about the battles, the bodies, the burning ships. He thought about the enemies he had killed and the friends he had lost. They had 1,000 years to build their empires, he said finally. 1,000 years to become wise. 1,000 years to learn kindness. Instead, they spent that time believing they were better than everyone else. They built their power on cruelty and fear. He turned to face Minho. We had 30 years. Just 30 years. And we spent every single day preparing for the moment they proved us right about them. We didn't want war. But when war came, we were ready. Minho nodded slowly. And now, Taiho smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. Now we build something different. Something lasting. We show the galaxy that strength doesn't have to mean cruelty. That power doesn't have to mean oppression. He put his hand on Minho's shoulder. That's your job now, Captain. I'm just an old man. The future belongs to you. High Speaker Do Yanli gave the opening address at the first anniversary of the Assembly of Worlds. Representatives from 30 species stood in silence as he spoke. 1 year ago, humanity was alone. We were mocked. We were attacked. We were told that we did not matter. The old council believed that power gave them the right to decide who lives and who dies. They were wrong. He looked around the room. At former enemies who were becoming allies, at species who had once hated each other, learning to work together. Humanity came to the stars, hoping to find friends. We found teachers instead. They taught us that kindness is not weakness. They taught us that patience is not surrender. They taught us that even the smallest voice can shake the galaxy. His voice grew stronger. We learned our lessons well. And now we will teach what we know. Every voice matters. No species stands alone. And those who mock the powerless will one day answer to them. He raised his hand toward the glass ceiling, toward the stars beyond. This is the new order. Not built on fear. Not built on force. Built on the simple truth that we are all travelers in the same darkness, looking for the same light. The assembly rose to its feet. For the first time in galactic history, 30 species stood together as equals. For the first time, they did not bow to power. They bowed to hope. Side. The sun set over New Sol. The sky burned with red and gold. Children played in the streets below, laughing without fear. Ships flew through the heavens carrying not weapons, but passengers. Teachers and students, builders and dreamers. The galaxy had changed. And at the center of that change stood a small blue planet that had once been told it was nothing. They had been wrong. Humanity was everything.